Hello, and welcome to our weekly LinkedIn Live leadership series, Voices of Leadership. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Kathy Eastwood, your host and founder of E=Y. We are a firm partnering with executives looking to drive change and know that people are key to their success. A team's job is to deliver the business results. It's the role of the leader to empower, inspire, and enable the people and teams to deliver those results. And there's a repeatable formula for that. E3 leadership code: express plus engage plus execute, powered by emotional quality. It's a human approach to the high performance. So before we get started, let's make this interactive. Please let us know where you're dialing in from. And of course, please ask questions. And we will be looking at the chat and trying to interweave those questions as we go along. So each week, we talk with leaders who are navigating real changes in their organization, and they share what they're learning along the way. Right now, many organizations are in the middle of a major shift. AI isn't something we're talking about as a future trend anymore. It's already showing up inside companies. Teams are experimenting with it, leaders are trying to understand where it fits, and in many cases, entire roles and processes are starting to evolve. For some leaders, that's exciting. For others, it's unsettling. And for many organizations, the real question isn't, should we use AI? The question is, how are we actually turning it into real value? And that's where leadership becomes so important, because technology doesn't transform organizations. People do. And that's why I'm really excited about today's conversation. Our guest is Jay Allardyce, Chief Product Officer at Octave and co-founder of GenAI.orgs. Jay and I have worked together. We've known each other. I don't know if I want to count how many years, Jay, we've actually known each other. Yeah, it's been a few. But Jay has always been building products that are at the intersection of enterprise systems, data, and emerging technologies. And he's right in the middle of how organizations adopt new capabilities and what it really takes to turn innovation into outcomes. So Jay, thanks so much. Welcome to the show.
Kathy.
Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks. And so before we dive in, I know this has been an extremely busy week for you, and congratulations on the Octave rebrand. And it's exciting to see the new chapter. I mean, we talked probably over a year ago about what you were doing, but I think AI has really been a big part of your transformation in Octave. Is that right?
Just a little bit. It has. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's been a busy week, busy couple of weeks, and a big shout out to our entire marketing leadership. Our CMO David Cryer and our head of marketing demand gen Jody Lebo for driving this entire brand transformation. And so now it's really exciting to be a megaphone of that, to share where we're going, the voice of that, and create some conviction within the market around how we're transforming our product sets and our company, and also too, as you said, radically adopting AI first within the company, as well as how we're helping our customers navigate through some of these challenges as well.
Excellent. So when you look at it, because I mean, you walked in saying, okay, AI is going to be that strategy first. There's a lot of people that are still trying to figure out, from your vantage point and working with different enterprises, what are you starting to see of how AI can really make a difference?
Yeah. So I think first and foremost, we have to bucket it into a couple of things. A lot of folks gravitate towards AI as a technology. Absolutely fine. But absent of clarity about the outcome or the value that it's driving, it doesn't really mean much. So let me just give a parallel of a learning I think many of us have gone through in the past decade. There was so much promise with IoT. And everyone said, how this is the way it's going to change. We're going to connect every device, every asset, and we're going to run the business more efficiently. Well, that promise is true, but unfortunately, it regressed to the mean of what IoT was, which was connecting devices and making them more intelligent. It never really helped to answer the question of what problem are you trying to solve. And so when we think about it, internally for Octave, first and foremost, is how do we think about this as a new tool set, but more importantly, a new way of working. And so one of the things we've been driving internally is if this is a set of tools, so you can pick any model, Gemini, Anthropics, Microsoft, Amazon. I'm not biased to anyone. A lot of people do know that I am, but we'll just leave it as such. But the point is, you're asking yourself a whole different way of working and using an application. And that is no different than how you and I would work in our days as a team. Like, how do I understand your point of view? How do I work with how you're seeing something and then react and manage more quickly? And so there has been a lot of skepticism of like, oh, you know what, this is the holy grail. Maybe it's going to work. Or, you know what, I'm going to wait till it's perfect. Right. And with anything, you have to adopt and evolve with it. And with AI, it's even more so, especially from a development perspective, from a content creation perspective, a way that can help speed up productivity the way you work. So, if anything, first and foremost is just lean in far more than you ever have with any other technology, because you're building new muscle. And I'll dive into more of that. But the second, I would say, then outward for our customers, it's been a discussion of, I don't believe it. I'll wait till it's finished, or you know what, this too shall pass. Right? It's not going to pass, and it is a moment where you have to be very clear. Does it align to outcome value? Does it align financially to solving a particular problem? So I'll give you a case example for us is, helping our largest construction builders in the world, the EPCs. They do tremendous work in building roadways, power plants, stadiums, refineries, all things that we depend on day in and day out as citizens. So the value of what they do is all about project delivery, on time, schedule, the right material, right labor. And I'm grossly simplifying the Herculean work that they do, but there's ways to simplify that. So you're not having to go through massive design changes or having miscues on material availability or being able to understand supply shocks on how you deliver that project. So how can AI help to at least inform, so you can make a better decision or avoid a tremendous amount of rework? So long story short, being able to ascribe that to economic value of how it's supporting their business of margin improvement, is absolutely step one. And I think that is where most companies are challenged, because they really start from a technology in hope of solving a business problem.
Yeah. So you're saying, okay, what are you trying to do as a business, and how can we help make it better, easier, higher quality, right? Like, how many times, if you're not using these kind of things, people are always a bottleneck, right? And so many, and I don't say people in a bad way, but like, if I have to go in and code something, right, like, and type something in, there's a lot of risk that I could mistype something.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or I can analyze things the wrong way. But this really just helps you make better decisions because you have more information there.
Yeah, it's an assist in many ways, and it's interesting. Anthropic just came out this last week with a way to validate hallucination for code development. So that's one of the biggest fears that people had, is you're developing crappy code, and therefore you're spending more time fixing it. I think in many ways, a PM and engineering role evolves to be ways where you're code completing for production scale. And so it's a bit of having to let go of, well, I've spent 30 years learning how to program, and that's my identity. That's my lifeblood. And the minute you start to see, Claude Code or whomever produce far faster, one, you're going to say, well, wait a minute, that's what I'm doing. That's my value. And second, you're going to look at it and say, you know what, all these errors, see, I can do it better. Right. So you're in this mental who moved my cheese scenario, as opposed to saying, okay, do I really like writing the same thing over and over and over and over? Or can I focus on completing it, productionizing it, and focusing on 2 to 3 new use cases? So there is a bit of the, you and I talk so much about people, process, technology, and like sometimes I feel like we're in the circular, argument of everyone says that same thing, but it's finally coming to head where the technology is in support of a process rewiring of what then people have to change in order to do their job differently. And that's the first step.
And Jay, I mean, for the audience that we've had, there's probably the level of people using AI at this point is across the board, all levels. But a lot of people are just familiar with using AI as helping get some communication skills, right? Maybe automating a couple of things they do repetitively. But I mean, you guys are using it across the board and in product development, correct?
Tremendously. Yeah. So there are so many angles that this can touch. So maybe there's a framing that helps. So one thing, actually, you and I went through it as we were doing this at HP when we, created kind of the Moneyball model of how do we transform a business. You do three things: you build great software, you sell great software, and you deliver that great software. And so functions line up in a software world of product and R&D, sales and marketing, services, and customer success. If you can understand that value chain and you're consistent with context, because a model is only good as the context it has. Same thing as an organization. If you've got context of how you work, then everyone knows the role that they play. But now then you get smart to say, where's the highest repetitive work happening that then therefore I can use an AI tool to support, in addition to that. So one example might be on the development side, where you're constantly QAing or you're testing. You know it best in our world of test automation, and some products we had, extremely valuable back in the days, and no different, very valuable. But there's a tremendous amount of automation that can happen. And so much so, script development, training for variances, because in AI, you're spending more time building and evolving evals because you're constantly looking at human state and the way that people interact with information. That becomes a new test harness. So where can you automate that aspect that is just in the pipeline of SDLC? Like, geez, you know what? That can maybe be brought forward so the QA is not so heavy, the testing is not so heavy because you've designed for purpose in the beginning. So that's like one example. Another one that we're really excited about, and this is now making its waves. So maybe a year ago or a year and a half ago, it was coined of vibe coding, and everyone launched into that, and then became a bit of fear of, wait a minute, developers saying vibe coding, so it means my job's irrelevant, and therefore everyone kind of pushing back saying, no, this isn't going to work. Well, it does work, but if you orient it to a front end from idea to concept, so you have a spark of an idea, how do I get that on paper very quickly? In a remote world, as you and I are, I would have to spend a lot of time creating context and go into a virtual whiteboard, and you and I trying to, then you go, you know what? Oh, now I get this. Remember the days we're sitting in a room and you go to whiteboard real quick and we're all drawing it. You're like, got it in 10 minutes. We're off and running. So vibe coding, what we term here at Octave is vibe methods. It is the way to condense the upfront ideation to then customer validation of outcomes and value to something that actually can be production code. But more so, you're iterating through that feedback loop, which oftentimes is one of the most exhaustive tasks. And by doing that, you're getting everybody on the same page very, very quickly. And then you're able to incorporate changes and ideas very quickly without going back to the drawing board and waiting for UI UX to come back after 2 weeks and say, here's my new mock-up. So that's the development side that is changing things significantly for us. But my point in saying it is every function has a duty, if you will, to understand where they have the high repetitive nature, that therefore AI can supplant some of that work so they can focus on tasks that can be if you will, a bit more higher value add.
Yeah, and actually we have Ravi that just commented on it, right? Definitely AI is helping dev teams nowadays, which is helping them concentrate on other things.
Yes.
Right. And I think that's the part I remember. And now automation was always something that you really had to know, you had to have your processes really well defined, and then you could automate things like that. I remember bringing a team in because we were going to automate contract operations. If you remember, that was all a very manual, people intense process, and they hated it. The team was just like, oh. So we brought them all in together and said, if we could get rid of all of the mundane tasks, what would you want to do? And they're like, this is fantastic. And they got on board because they got to be part of, here's what's simple. And so I think that's really important for leaders to understand, is to bring in the people to help them redesign some of it, because they have the best ideas, right? Because I'm assuming all of this was designed with the developer as part of, what's working, what's not, and how can we simplify all this?
Yeah, your point about bringing folks along, it's so important because I see two things happening. One is board mandate, and then it's a stated thing but unclear of how to execute. And so a CEO or senior leadership oftentimes is constantly saying it, but it's not making traction happen. The flip side is you give a definition around it, you give examples because you've been there, done that, but you allow the team to go figure out to say what works for you. And we've had some teams do that because very similar to our time at HP of an amalgamation of acquisitions, we've had acquisitions here. So you have different cultures, you have different viewpoints and approaches. So you have to celebrate those. And there are some teams that have absolutely crushed it. And I mean, so much so when you read some of the notes, you're like, my gosh, they just took this to a whole new level because they saw what it meant for them versus like, oh, I have to adopt AI. So, and so much so, some teams had stated like, we're now touching code that we've not touched in 10 years, right? And so there's a lot that plays to it, but as you always rightfully say, it's like if you can bring the team along, then we're going to go 10 times faster. And so that's just a principle that I think you've influenced me a bit on over the years.
Yeah. How many times would I say, "Oh, what about the people, Jay?"
I can say, what about the agents? No.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, do you feel like from your experience of helping teams and organizations get over kind of the hump, do you feel there needs to be a point of a little bit of experimentation and then that's how you can start to really implement it? And or is it, get in there and trust and then figure out what you need to do afterwards?
Yeah, experimentation all the way through. And here's why. I mean, it's just no different than life outside of tech or work. You're experimenting on a new hobby or a new training plan or trying to eat better, whatever the thing may be, right? You're going to go through iterations until you build a muscle memory, and then therefore it clicks and it's right for you. But oftentimes that first step is like, wow, this is great. And then you're like, forget it, didn't work, give up, what have you. So that experimentation is doing nothing more than helping you reframe how you work using it. And then once you have that personal conviction with it, you're like, now I'm off and running because it works for you. Because not everyone, as we know, right? Not everybody operates like everyone else, nor should they. But that experimentation is tremendous. And then plus two, it's um, you know, if anything, it's just allowing for speed and adaptation to solve some bigger problems versus you picked off the most difficult of problems. And if you were to fail at that, you might likely not want to experiment yet again.
Yep. So if there's leaders on here that haven't really picked up AI beyond, I would say almost everyone's dabbling in it. Now I go back to if anyone's sending an email out that probably hasn't been looked some point of AI, they're missing something. But what do you think is the biggest hurdle for people to start adapting or adopting it into their work styles?
Yeah.
What recommendations would you have?
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a hack that I enjoy is to how do I in this idea of being an infinite learner, how do I continually challenge myself to think differently through a problem just from a different orientation from someone's view. So yes, I'll have again an AI model that's kind of my fourth button on my phone, and so I use it extensively and more so to challenge how I approach a problem because if you think about I'm going to wait till which model is next version or what have you, like don't try to do for that. Like it's changing every hour, every minute, and just getting better, more safe, better guardrails, privacy, you name it. So first and foremost, I would say is have it do a bit of introspection to you. So prompt could be very well, I am a leader or senior leader of this particular company. I've been working this type of method over the past X number of years, and it's worked up into this point. Help me reanalyze my approach and understanding how maybe it might work in an AI forward view where you can help me have the confidence to one, learn it myself, and two, help me be able to communicate to my teams. That is a bit of your personal coach, right? You and I would go to somebody, spend a fair bit of money, sit down, spend time first as an intake to get context, to then
Yeah.
have someone have credible conversation. We know that takes time and build that relationship. Here is a great way to just do that relative to you.
Yep.
And another hack that we'll be sharing with the team is, as AI agents are happening and are being used and will be part of our technology fabric going forward, is how do you redefine the tech stack that you have today if you had to build it agentically first? And that's not a cheat code of any means. It's helping you to reframe the usage of how you structure something using the technology. So those are two little ones, but there are so many great resources. You mentioned one of them. Haven't been a part of the GenAI.orgs team, but you can go to Google, to Amazon. There's so many free courses. I would say absorb as much as you can.
Yep.
I'll give another hack a little bit later.
Excellent. Well, okay, so we're going to pivot a little bit because Manny has a really good question. I'm going to bring it up on the screen here so that we can see it. So he's saying, great adaptation of AI. Can you give some examples of a few metrics that got improved, or the range of improvements that you've seen, like go-to-market, reduction in software bugs? Do you have any metrics like that you could share?
Data wise, I can't say like X to Y improvements that I don't have it sitting in front of me. So just transparently, but yeah, so probably three big buckets. So one, if I look at let's start on the front end, from an ideation to concept. In a typical path in previous times, and even now, I would say, could be a 6 to 9 month type exercise where you're spending weekly meetings, trying to get time with a customer, go socialize with someone else, update a PowerPoint deck. Like, the motion. It is just laborious. And that 6 to 9 month is sometimes like an entire company can be rewritten in that time frame now.
Yeah.
We've condensed that down to 2 weeks. Now,
2 weeks.
A goal we personally had was to say we needed to be under a month. A team broke that and they got it under 2 weeks. Now, the idea was to put a hyper constraint on that, because best. If you remove distractions, you put everyone in the room, you establish that context, then it's off to the races. And so the team did that. Now, is that going to be every team? No, but I think they set a new tone. So that's one. Definitely on the QA and testing aspects, we've seen radical improvements. More so building automated test harness, being able to do QAing, things you and I've lived in previous lives. And the teams have done tremendous, where they kept building capabilities around this to suit their testing needs and variations of it. So one, not only using it as a tool, but adapting it to become a new way of how they measure that. So significant reduction in quality related issues, bug fix time turnarounds, as well as just the ability to ship production level code.
Love it. Yeah, and it's funny because Manny and I talk about ROI all the time because he's very focused on it. So it was a great question, Manny. Thank you. So we've been talking a lot about in the products organization.
Mhm.
Who do you see owning the AI strategy these days? And who do you think? It's a big question, I know, but
let's take a parallel of what hasn't worked, or perhaps it didn't yield the result we thought. So not to say it didn't work. The whole notion of digital transformation, right? So you had somebody appointed to be the chief digital transformation officer, and that person had a title and a mandate of that title, but perhaps not the empowerment to truly transform. Having been in a couple of those seats before, it's exciting, but man, is it painful, right? Because you have to get everybody on board. And I think a failure point there sometimes is a board or CEO will appoint somebody there, but not establish the footing that that person has the decision rights or has the ability to foster or create the decision rights across everybody to execute on that mission. And so it was never really established appropriately. You can see now there's the rise of the chief AI officer. And so what can we learn from that to help this role be substantially? First and foremost, there's not one singular success view of AI in a company. It has to be within everybody's lexicon, every way of working. So therefore, I would honestly put it on the shoulders of the CEO to empower the teams, um, and also administer by doing in their own way. So even if that's just the way they think, the way they use a tool to approach it, if they're out there building agent frameworks, awesome, even better. But most CEOs aren't, right? And so I think first and foremost, it has to be on the job and the shoulder of the CEO, because just as they're accountable to drive growth and the business with everybody else, the element of change, the culture change, starts with them as well, and then it manifests with the leadership. So I would answer it twofold. One is, if you do appoint a chief AI officer, ensure as a leadership team that you embrace that person and you help them be successful. And it doesn't mean that they're the new AI person and you're not. It just means that you can leverage them to broaden that across the company. The second is, make sure that this is a leadership level accountability. So I put that on myself as a CPO. I know my CTO does as well, CMO all the way down. So everybody should take ownership in that. So multiple ways to define it, but I think it's every leader's responsibility to embrace, model the way, and be challenged by their teams on how they can also as leaders get better.
Yeah. And I mean, we had this conversation earlier in the week when we were talking about this. I don't even remember that I heard one organization actually thought they were putting it under the chief people officer.
Yeah.
And at first I was like, what? Technology? Like, it just didn't, for me at first, didn't quite get it. And then when it was explained and we've been through this a ton of times, right? If technology leads,
Yeah.
we're like, well, wait a minute, where are the people in this conversation? We've got to focus on that. And now when you think about AI, it really is a different way of working. And you mentioned that at the beginning of our chat, and I think it's important to restate it. It's not a technology. It is a different way of working. And the technology really is just enabling it.
100%. Remember, and I'm sure most of the audience is tenured enough to know this shift, right? We went from CIO to then decentralized, right, with SaaS. And so everyone loved to be in IT. They wanted to be a part of that, be the epicenter of innovation. And then every line of business was frustrated the CIO was not moving fast enough, right? I need this. Okay, give me your requirements. I'll look at it and then I'll build you something, and I might get there in 9 months. So that centralized versus decentralized. And so as that pendulum swung to be line of business, you can own your applications. It's now kind of swung back in the middle, where a CIO is a massive enabler to allow the rest of the business to move faster. So it's interesting, as you mentioned, about the chief people officer or of head of HR. I was talking with our head of HR, Jennifer, who's wonderful. We had a little bit of dialogue. I said, look, you are the glue across the company to help ensure we are rowing in the same direction, from a culture, a mandate, a way of working, really helping to embody the values. And that's not meaning it comes from you, but you're the catalyst. You're an agent of change. And if we realize that this is a new way of working versus a tool, then every employee has an obligation or opportunity to evolve. And so they're probably the one most unified organization that touches everybody in the company. So I think in this, it's, how do you make sure, just like the chief AI officer, that if in HR, everybody recognizes the importance of the role and what they're trying to do, versus HR is telling you need to adopt AI, right? Because that's where all this falls flat, whether it's in product or operations or somewhere else.
Well, yeah, and I think that's a lot of what I love spending my time on, is getting leaders really ready to lead through this change, right? Because this is a massive, upheaval on what they're used to, right? People like to stay, oh, we've always done it this way. This has worked. Why are you moving my
Yeah.
cheese, as you mentioned earlier?
Yeah.
But I think as leaders, we're the most important aspect of all of this to make sure it works, because the individuals are looking to the leaders. And when I say leaders, I mean anybody responsible for managing other people, right? So I think the execs have to be driving the agenda, but the first line managers are so critical in this, because if they're not on board, they're going to cause a lot of disruption in making it happen.
100%. And what's interesting too, right? So the leaders have to be on board. They have to demonstrate by doing, but they also have to really call out where they see excellence happening. I'll give you just an example. We've got a early in tenure developer who just completely leaned into this, crushing various roles, meaning UI, UX, PM, dev, and came up with a new way to model something forward. Now, old way would be, well, that person would share something with their management. That management might share something with the next management. The next management says, well, this is great. I'm going to put my name on it. Or I'm not going to share it because this person's moving too fast. You should stay in your box, right? And we often realize that that still exists, unfortunately. So flip it upside down. Your job as a leader is really to ensure the next generation are to become leaders. Your best way of doing that is give them a platform to showcase what they've done. Right. And I think that, if anything, is where leaders have to embody AI, but they have to then invert it to be like, wow, this person just did something that is off the charts. How do I share that and get others to see? And then boats rise as a result of that.
Yeah.
So
So do you do innovation showcases, or I'm trying to think of the name we used to use at HP, but I mean, we had a big innovation hub, right, of really showcasing anything that was coming down the pike.
Yes. So we do a couple formats. So one is we do a call for papers. And so we'll go across our product teams, R&D teams, and a number of them will submit things that they're doing. And that will be over a cohorted time period of 4 to 6 months. So it's a very kind of structured type process. Then there are others of just as things are happening. So one thing that you and I went through, kind of evolved since then, but it's kind of like a product jam session. So how do you just showcase what folks are doing every month, every quarter, and really focusing on not just the things that they're working on today, but the gaps.
Yeah.
And back to the whole Google 20% versus 20% innovate, 80% to work. It never really worked that way, but if we can help team members, one, use it in spinning up what they do better, or focusing on a gap that they see within a business. So like back to your contract problem, that could very well have been someone out of product and engineering that says, you know what, let's go tackle that. Let's go figure this out, working with the contract team. Or more importantly, since we deal with procurement and contracting and supply within our business suite or products for our customers, how do I pull out the procurement team here that says, you know what, there's a whole different way we looked at this problem. How can we build this? And that could be contribution to our product.
Yeah. I mean, so much what you've said today, Jay, I love, and it really started with the customer in mind, right? Like you started with, what does the customer need? How do we think about it, right? It's all outcome based. And then working back of how do you get the solution to the customer as quickly as possible to make their life easier.
Yeah.
And I think that's how we have to all be thinking about it, right? What's the end game and how do we get there? And then how do we do it as quickly as possible? So looking ahead, so I know we'll start to wrap up here, but I can talk to you all day about this. This is fascinating.
Likewise.
So looking ahead as leaders, right? And me, I think everyone has a role of being a leader. What do you think are going to be the biggest capabilities needed as we go forward? Because I think AI is bringing a lot of the intelligence to play, right? So what are some of the skills that may or may not really exist today? And where do you think leaders should be thinking forward on what they're going to need?
Yeah. First and foremost, curiosity. So you have to get back to a bit of a child's mind and asking the multiple questions, why something worked, why something didn't. That is just investigating work to understand something, right? And we are like that right now because it's not asking a primary or secondary or tertiary question. It is really kind of a choose your own adventure, navigating your way as questions evolve, as the information comes back to you. It's not a request and a retrieval type action. So one is curiosity of, if there are things you don't understand or an approach to something, ask to help reframe that for you. Help to look at your business the way it is. Analyze the way the business looks through the lens of how you see it. Ask it to challenge you. Grade it. Like, I'll do self-grading and stuff, and I'll come back and I got a B plus. I'm like, darn it, what did I miss? But the positive of that, it forces a self-introspection, but most importantly, it asks again, why does something work? Why should it be this way? Why is it designed this way? Because unfortunately, we've been all institutionalized, academia onward, to look at things in certain ways. This is a moment of insane curiosity that I think honestly creatives are going to, or more people are going to tap the creativity that perhaps they have let go of over the years. So that's kind of one. Two is, you don't have to be right. As a leader, we've all been taught as you go through that you have to be the right answer. If you don't have the right answer, it is a mark of fear or failure. That is absolutely not true. There's no one individual that knows everything that I know of. But the fact is that you are not going to be able to understand everything. But if you have the appreciation, um, okay, we'll keep talking. Sorry, I had I don't know if that was on my side, Kathy, but a little bit of a blip. So what I was saying, the other part was that as a leader, you don't have to have all answers, and you shouldn't feel like you have to be the expert at AI in order to have a conversation with your team. As a leader, you need to spark the conversation and give a safe place for conversation for people to voice an idea, whatnot. And since it's all new for everybody, everybody should feel okay to share any idea and not feel like they're going to get ridiculed if it's not right. And so that's an important piece for us.
No, it's really well said. And as you were talking, and curiosity, right? You don't have to have all the answers. I think we've gotten into this space where, like, this command and control style of leadership is really now not. I mean, I was never a big fan of it anyway, but it's getting worse and worse, right? Because you can't tell someone what to do anymore. You really need to be thinking out of the box. You need to be inspiring and enabling, because someone can have a much better idea than you. And that's what you need to be doing, is harvesting all of that knowledge that you can get and using the tools to help you get there.
Yeah, I think spot on. And if we realize, as in leadership roles, your job is to not have all the answers, not to be in control of every step. Your job is to set a framework of how things can get done, should get done, set the context, but allow the team to run like hell to figure things out, because that's where you're going to get a 10x kind of impact on productivity versus, okay, I'll be told what to do, because then you're going to get what you've asked for, and perhaps not to the depth that you're hoping for. So, I mean, there's so many ways to answer that question, but I start with that curiosity aspect, because it is a step function in learning, and that I've never seen in my technology career, that we're just scratching the surface of right now.
I agree. And I think the other one is really having a lot of empathy. The emotional intelligence now, I think, is what is going to be a differentiator for leaders, because everyone's, that intelligence is going to be supplemented by AI and the other, technologies. But, the heart is going to be needed to help inspire, enable, empower people to stay engaged, do their part, want to change. Because, I mean, you guys are way ahead, but there's still a lot of change ahead of you, and there's a lot of change in front of a lot of organizations.
Well, we're making our efforts and our dents in the change. I would say we still have a long ways to go to, but I like the momentum. I love the energy of the team. I love being challenged on the ideas. But there are companies out there today that have built as if it was the only technology that they had access to. It is tremendous to see that sort of inflection and change. So borrowing ideas from that is even very helpful to reframe. But yeah, I think the empathy and the awareness, because we're just going faster and things will break, people will get upset. Um, but if you create the safety of doing, then you know you're on a rocket ship.
I agree. Well, Jay, thank you so much. This was absolutely fascinating. Appreciate all your insights. And, I hope you will come back again, because I have a feeling you'll have a lot more to share in a few months and all the changes. But congratulations on all you've achieved so far. And to all that have joined, or if you're listening later, feel free to put your questions still, because Jay and I can get them after this live recording. And we appreciate you all for coming. Have a great weekend. Take care.
Thank you all. Thank you, Kathy.